Please note that all examples and samples in this course are provided for educational purposes only. They illustrate pitfalls and common problems and are not intended to constitute legal advice. TheMusicBusinessSchool.com highly recommends you to choose a legal advisor prior to signing any agreement. Now, let's talk business.
Hi, my name is Dominique Blais. Thank you for watching TheMusicBusinessSchool.com. Today, I want to teach you how to get radio royalties. I've divided this lesson in 6 different sections. The first one is royalty split, then example 1, what is a blanket license, the money flow chart, example number 2, and then how to join pros. Okay, so let's start with the royalty split. So there's always an author and or a composer. The author is the person who actually writes the lyrics, while the composer is the person writing the music. Okay, so authors equal lyrics and composer equal music. Both together, if they work together actually, they will share 50-50. So there's always 50% for the lyrics and 50% for the music. Of course, if it's an instrumental song, 100% will go to the music part only because there's no lyrics obviously. But if I write music and if you write lyrics, 50-50. Okay? That equal 100%. So each and every song must equal 100% every time. So now what I want to see with you, it's when there's multiple authors and multiple composers. So at the end of the day, we still need 100%. But how do we split it? So 50% for the lyrics part and 50% for the music part. I said it already. You should know that by now, right? That equal 100%, always and every time. So obviously to get 50% for the lyrics part, you would need to split 25% and 25% for both authors. So if you look, author 1, 25, author 2, 25, that equals 50%, right? And then we go to the music part, you would have 3 different composers. Composer number 1, 20%, composer number 2, 20%, and composer number 3, 10%. That equals 50%. Okay, don't get me wrong here. The numbers might be different from a song to another. The idea is to always keep 50% for the lyrics part and 50% for the music part. So maybe, let's change the numbers a little bit here. So maybe author 1 would get 5% and author 2, 45%. What's important is to keep 50-50 for a total of 100%. Okay? So now what happens if we involve music publishers in the deal? So music publishers will be getting some shares, of course. Okay? So author number 1, he had 25% in the first place. So now that he signed a deal with publisher A, let's call him publisher A, the split between them is going to be 50-50 between them, right? So 12.5, 12.5. That equals the first 25% the author had, because by signing the publishing deal, the author agrees on giving away half of his royalties to the music publisher. Then same thing with author 2, right? So if you calculate again, the lyrics part is still at 50%. So 12.5 plus 12.5 plus 12.5 plus 12.5, that equals 50%. Then we jump to the composer part, well, the music. So composer number 1 initially had 20%, but now he had to split with another music publisher. Let's call him publisher B. You see, there's publisher B could be involved with the lyrics, but he could be involved with the music part as well. It's not a problem, right? So the composer number 1 would get 10% for him and 10% for the music publisher, because he splits his royalty half and half between him and his music publisher. That's what the music publishing deal is. The composer number 2, same thing, but if you look properly here, there's a third music publisher that I call publisher C, right? So music publisher would get 10% and the composer would get 10%. And the last one, if you remember from a little earlier, the composer had only 10%. So only can split that 10% in two. So this is 5% for the composer and 5% for the music publisher. In this case, I gave the royalties to publisher A. So there's only 3 music publishers, but there's 5 guys who wrote the music, lyrics and music, right? So total, there's 8 persons involved with the royalty split for that song. This is very common, right? Again, at the end, it must be 100% all the time. So you got to make sure when you split your royalties with an author or a composer that you always equal 100%, right? And you cannot share with the publisher something that doesn't belong to you. So if you own 10% of a song, you can sign a deal with the publisher for that 10% that is yours. So it's going to be 5% for you, 5% for the music publisher. Okay, so now let's talk about example number 1. So let's pretend there's a royalty income of $1,000. Okay, author number 1 has 12.5% already, which means $125 in his pocket. Same thing happens with author number 2. Remember, initially he had 25%, but he signed a publishing deal, which means half of his money goes to the music publisher. The third person is the composer number 1. So composer number 1 has 10%, that equals $100. Composer number 2, same thing. Composer number 3, 5%, for a grand total of $50 here. Okay, so for music publisher A, there's 2 little things we need to consider. Number 1, 12.5% comes from author 1, and 5% comes from composer number 3. That equals a grand total of 17.5% for $175. Same situation happens with publisher B, which means 12.5% comes from author number 2, and 10% comes from composer number 1, and that equals 22.5% here. So the 22.5% represents $225. So that's the guy who's going to receive the most money out of this deal. Okay, publisher C, 10% total, which is $100. So again, if you calculate all the numbers here, you'll find out that that equals 100%, as I said earlier. So this is how the split would happen in that example here. Okay, so regarding the radio stations, they don't need to ask permission before they play a song. Okay, what they do is they get a license that we call a blanket license, which means that the blanket license allows the music users, such as the TV broadcasters, the radio stations, to broadcast music content legally without having to request individual licenses for each track used. Without this type of license, music users would have to spend a lot of time and resources getting all individual licenses from the right holders, such as the songwriters or the music publishers. A blanket license works with radio stations, but it works with TV stations. It works even with malls. So there's a lot of companies using blanket licenses so they can play all kind of music without getting a license or multiple licenses for one specific song. This is what I call the money flow chart. The money flow chart starts with the author and the composer. As we've talked earlier, the author and composer would receive 50-50, right? For a total of 100% as soon as they write the music or the lyrics. But if they sign a publishing deal, then the deal is going to be a little different. 25% author, 25% composer, and then 50% for the music publisher. Usually the music publisher will join a performing rights organization. This is what we call a pro, okay? So the music publisher will sign a deal with the pro, and then the pro is entitled to collect royalties on behalf of the music publisher. So the pro will collect the money and send it to the music publisher, and the music publisher will pay the author and the composer according to the publishing agreement. In some countries and in some cases, the author and the composer can join the pro directly. Okay, so the money will be split directly at source. So the pro will send the money directly to the music publisher, and also to the author and to the composer. So there are plenty of pros out there. Okay, so in the US you would have BMI, ASCAP, CSAC. In France you would have SACEM. In Canada you would have SOCAN. There's a lot of pros, and they all, not all, but a lot of them would work together. Okay, so the performing rights organization will sign a deal with the music users. In that case, for this lesson, the music user is radio stations. But the music users could be TV stations, it could be venues, even malls, right? So they all get blanket licenses. They pay an annual fee to the pro, and the pro will take that money and split it between the authors and the composers and the music publishers involved within a specific song. Just to support what I'm saying here, the music user will send money to the performing rights based on the blanket licenses terms. And then the performing rights organization will send the money to the music publishers, and in some cases directly to the authors and the composers. So I'll give you a little example here. Let's say your song plays on a radio like pretty good, and the pro collected $20,000 from the radio stations, and now they need to split it. So the author would get 25%, which is $5,000. The composer, same thing, and the music publisher would receive 50% of the money, which is $10,000, for a total of $20,000, right? And again, the royalty split is always based on 100%. Okay, so now the question is how to join pros. The only performing rights organization in Canada is called SOCAN. You can reach them at socan.com. As a member, you may be entitled to receive royalties 4 times a year, when your music is used in movies, on television, on radio, in concert, and much more. So as a music creator, you can join if you're a composer, a songwriter, or an author. You can join if your music has been published by a music publisher. You can also join if your music has been recorded. Your music has been used or will be used by a radio station, on a TV show, or during a live performance. Those are all criteria that would make it possible for you to join SOCAN. So as an author or a composer, it's free. You can join for free, and then they will collect the money for you. Of course, they keep a percentage, right? They keep a little percentage, then they send the money back directly into your bank account 4 times a year. Okay, so as a music publisher, there are 2 ways you can join SOCAN. Okay, so number 1, you can join if you own at least 5 copyright-protected musical works written or co-written by a writer member of SOCAN or by a Canadian. Okay, so the second one is that you are entitled by contract to receive the publisher's shares of the performance credits of at least 5 copyright-protected musical works that were written or co-written by a writer member of SOCAN or by a Canadian. Okay, so now perhaps you're considering joining a performing rights organization. If it's the case, I'm providing you here with some direct links to join SOCAN in Canada. And you can also join ASCAP, BMI in the States. And for CSAC, well, CSAC does not accept unsolicited submissions. You will have to ask your manager or your lawyer to call them up and find out how you can join CSAC. Thank you for watching this video. I hope now that you have a better understanding on how to get radio royalties. My name is Dominique Blais for themusicbusinessschool.com.